Welcome to Fred the Show. Have you ever thought about getting away from it all? And I'm talking about really getting away from it all. Well, our guest today and his wife are doing exactly that. Now, you know Scott Reimer, if you're a Clemson fan, from his years hosting the Tiger pregame show on The Roar, 22 years, mostly from every game location, 295 consecutive shows. But there's no football for him this year. There is no working in education, which he did for 3 decades, most recently with Greenville County. Scott Reimer, where are you today?
Well, good morning, Fred. We are in Colville, Utah, which is about 35 miles east of Salt Lake City.
And why are you there, and where have you been since the 1st of June of this year?
Well, the why, I think, is the easiest part to answer to that. My mother, Shirley, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease very young in her life, and my dad dutifully took care of her for many years, and then he became sick shortly after that, and passed away. They both have passed away now, and Ann and I just reflected like everyone would do in a situation like that on our lives and what we wanted to be able to do, because my parents, because of these illnesses, never got to do some of the things that they wanted to do in their life. And so Ann and I just said, well, why wait until we're really ready to retire? Why wait to do what we want to do? Why not take, as the kids say, a gap year from working and travel the country? And so that's what we set out to do. We had no experience camping, zero. We had to buy a rig. We had to learn how to use it. So it's been an adventure from the day we've purchased the rig up until today. We're learning every day.
That's right. The Reimers got themselves an RV. First of all, how many Clark Griswold remarks? If you had $1 for every Clark Griswold remark since you announced this plan, where would you be standing today?
Oh man, I tell you what, yeah, it's a lot of Clark Griswold remarks, a lot of "what are you thinking? That's crazy. How can you be away for that long?" I mean, all of the questions came, and some of them don't have easy answers. I mean, obviously the biggest negative of setting out and being gone for a year is being away from Greenville, South Carolina, our home, and our friends and family that are in Greenville. Technology does wonderful things. We can FaceTime, we can, call and do all of those things, but there's, obviously nothing like being in the same room with those that you care for. So certainly the negative of all of this, if there is a negative in the sense of taking on something as ambitious as being gone for a year, is not having the availability of your friends and family. Now, we have set this up to where some of our friends and family are coming to see us along the way, and some places that they wanted to visit as well. So they'll fly in and spend some time with us that way. But obviously, that's not the same as being at home.
You mentioned a moment ago, and it's part of your YouTube page. We're going to show that to everyone later because you can follow along on this journey with Scott and Ann. But I love that line, "What would we do now?" And waiting until later. You didn't want to do that. But at some point, one of the two of you had to articulate this out loud. Who said it first, and what was the reaction?
I said it first. It actually began to germinate a little bit in COVID, because that was about the timing of my mom's worst part of her decline. And so everybody, I think, that went through COVID reflected on a lot of things. And so you had a little bit of extra time on your hands at times as well. So, I verbalized it first to Ann. She's very much the pragmatic part of this relationship. She's way more conservative in nature with taking big risks and those types of things. So it took quite a bit of convincing. It was a hard no at first. And then it was a less hard no, and then I think she just really saw in me when we lost my dad that this is just going to keep eating at me if we don't do it, and we're going to regret having thought through this and waited to do it, and maybe risk that opportunity to that our health will, you're not guaranteed tomorrow, as you know, Fred. Yeah. So we just said, I think we will regret it if something were to happen where we wouldn't be able to do this. So she finally came on board and has been enthusiastic about it since we started. We always tell people, well, what happens if it doesn't go well or you get tired of doing it? I always say there's always a road that'll take us right back home to Greenville whenever we're ready to go.
Well, you finally decide, okay, we're going to make the trip. How did you lay out? Because you've really laid out this year for the most part. Is there any improvisation, or are you sticking to pretty much a set plan?
Very little improvisation. We're both planners by nature, very detail oriented. Now, in this community of full-time camping, there are plenty of people that don't plan like that. They just pick up and go where they want to go, get a reservation at a park the day before or on the same day. That's just not us. We really wanted to have everything mapped out for two reasons. Number one, we wanted to make sure that we got to everything that we wanted to do in the United States. But the other thing is, and really the way the trip was designed from the beginning was to avoid winter. To avoid cold, because when you're gone for an entire year, if you're doing a summer vacation, that's pretty simple, right? Mm-hmm. You can go pretty much anywhere in the United States of America in the summer and be fine and get to do the things you want to do. But that's not the case in, December, January, and February. There are only certain parts of the country that are accessible or accessible in an enjoyable way. You don't want to be in 10-degree weather trying to make a hike somewhere in a national park. So really the whole idea was to avoid winter. So when we started in June, we went straight northeast, went all the way up to eventually got to Acadia National Park up in Maine, and then began working our way west through the northern part of New York, Vermont, mm-hmm. Indiana, Illinois, Minnesota, while it was still summer. And then now, as we said earlier, we're in Utah. As we begin to get into the cooler months, we will move out to the West Coast. And we'll spend most of December, January, and February along Washington, Oregon, and California and Arizona in a little bit more temperate areas. It still could be cold, obviously, depending on weather patterns and all of those types of things. But on average, every place that we stay, on average, is not going to be below freezing throughout the entire trip.
Smart planning there. Okay, let's get into some of your travels, and I'm going to jump ahead well into it. Episode 14, and I've never been there. I'm glad you guys are. Tell me about going to Niagara Falls.
Well, that certainly has been one of the highlights of it for us, Fred, because, we've seen plenty of video and pictures and all of those things of Niagara Falls and that area. But it's really one of those places, like many things, that video and even our YouTube channel doesn't truly articulate the majesty and the enormous power of that water and wind that is created as the Niagara Falls, the water goes over the Niagara Falls. It is. I think we said maybe in the episode, or certainly we said after we did it, that is truly a place everybody should try to make an opportunity to visit, because it will leave you with a lasting image. I can still feel the wind of that water as it came over the crest and just almost blows you away. It's about 70, 80 miles an hour.
Wow.
It's just truly powerful.
Is there anything about that? Is it bigger than you imagined? Is it smaller than you imagined?
It's much bigger. In fact, when we were driving in, we could see, and our campground was maybe 10 miles or so, maybe not even that far from Niagara Falls, but it was a clear a flat trajectory, and you could actually see the mist of Niagara Falls from 7, 8, 9 miles away. It was, you can really get the scale of what you're doing. And of course, in Niagara Falls, you can also, and we did a tour where you can actually take the boat ride into the mouth of it. That was what some of that video you were just showing, and that's really where you feel it, because it's creates such a windstorm down there where the water comes over the Niagara Falls, and there's more to do in that area. You see that in the episode. There's a lot of things in the Niagara Falls area other than just doing the Niagara Falls. And that's been the case at almost everywhere that we've been. And there's the main attraction that drew us to stop in this location. But we're also finding that there's a lot of things that you don't read about maybe every day or don't see on TikTok or Instagram that we have found just as enjoyable sometimes as the main attraction.
Okay, I'm being a little bit greedy because my next stop on your tour is episode 17, which has special interest to me. I have been there once myself. I was 17 years old. My wife wants me to take her there, so I am all ears as you headed to right there, Upper Michigan. You became, an upper for a few days. You visited Mackinac Island and also the Upper Peninsula in Michigan. Tell me about that part of it.
Well, this is one of the great things about having people give you feedback, because to be honest with you, Michigan was not on the original Reimer on the Road spreadsheet design. And we were told by multiple people, including my sister, that you just can't miss Mackinac and Mackinac Island. And so we rearranged the trip a little bit to get to Mackinac. And then in that process, we had some Michiganders, I guess is what they call themselves, give us some feedback that, hey, there's not only Mackinac, and that's awesome, and you're going to love that, but you also need to go to Sleeping Bear Dunes, which is a little bit south of Mackinac, and then you need to go into the Upper Peninsula of Michigan because it's just beautiful up there. And they were absolutely right. And so we based out of Mackinac City, where we were able to do Mackinac Island, which is, one of the more unique places in the United States because of cars on the island, not one. Everything is horse and bike and walking, and which makes it a really neat adventure. But it was the side trips up into Upper Peninsula of Michigan and then down to Traverse City area that made that whole trip even more amazing than just how amazing Mackinac Island was. So that again is Michigan would have been the last place on earth I thought would be a great travel destination. I just think of Michigan and I think cold, and just just absolutely beautiful. And it's one of those places in America, especially once you get towards the upper part of Michigan, it's not a byway. People aren't traveling those roads to get from point A to point B. If you're up there in Michigan, especially in northern Michigan, you're up there for a reason. You either live there or you're going to visit someplace. So it really is a unique part of this country.
Well, I can't wait to get her up there. I've seen it. I've spent a little time up there when I was younger, Leland, which is near that part of the area. So it is beautiful. We've got a lot more to come in just a moment. We're going to be talking with Scott Reimer. Reimer on the Road with Scott and Ann. That's the topic of this week's edition of Fred the Show. We'll be right back here on WSPA Plus. Back now with Scott Reimer, and I mentioned that you are, of course, for 22 years, the host of the Tiger pregame show. We are recording right before Clemson plays North because 1 and 3, they needed you. You're the problem. You left them, and now they've lost 3 of 4.
You are not the first to have mentioned that, Fred Cunningham. I have caught quite a bit of grief via phone calls, FaceTime, text messages, emails, to replies on X, blaming me for this. And I told everyone the same thing. If I could get on a plane or get in my truck and get back to Clemson, South Carolina, and all of those problems on the football field go away, I'd be the first to do it. I just don't think I don't think that's the remedy. It's been been a pretty surprising start to the season. I don't think that's probably the easiest way to say it, Fred. And I really feel bad for the fans because, as you know, I know you guys have your Sky Cam in Clemson on your morning broadcast, and so you guys are in touch with Clemson as well as a news channel. And Clemson game day has always been a big event. It's not just the game. I mean, the game is obviously the reason everybody goes there, but it's so much more than that. It's being with friends, it's being with family, the big tailgates and grilling and doing all the things that Clemson fans love to do. And, not only has the start of the season not gone well, but then the 2 weather delays that, really just makes for a challenge. So I really feel bad for them. It's been hard to watch from far away because you want to be there, and that was certainly when we set out on this trip and the Tiger pregame show and my years of doing that. And then I know that's 22 years, but I've been going to Clemson home games since that I can remember since 1976. So it's been a long time since I haven't been in Clemson for a game day. And so that was definitely a unique experience watching the game. We were in South Dakota for the LSU game, and that was a little bizarre.
Well, you mentioned South Dakota. Let's go to South Dakota because one of course, the iconic places in the country, Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, and that's a great example of an area that you could do so much in one stop. All of the Mount Rushmore stuff is just awe-inspiring, and you can see it from so far away. If you drive in, there's a certain route you can take in, and you go through these bridges and tunnels, and you come out, and there's Mount Rushmore. So it's really, really an epic event. But in that one location where we stayed, we also did Badlands National Park, Wind Cave National Park. There's Crazy Horse Memorial is right down the road from Mount Rushmore. So it's a great example of, if you kind of look at the map and you look at a place to stay, you can do more than just the one thing. And that's what made that part of the country really cool. But again, it's one of those things that you just wish everybody could have the opportunity to go see, because it truly is in person. The scale of it is just so much bigger than what you see in the pictures.
Everything that you've been doing, I think, is really interesting because, and I think you even said it to me on our correspondence back and forth, outside of just having to get someplace, you're avoiding big cities.
Yeah, we've never really been, Ann or I, big city people. Now, there's nothing. We love Chicago. We've been into Chicago before. I've been to San Francisco with Clemson football when the Tigers were playing out in Santa Clara. So, we've been to some big cities, and it's, I think, neat to go to visit sometimes or to go to a conference and see it a little bit. But that never really was the driving force of this. And quite frankly, I don't believe there will be a time during this trip where we really go into what would kind of classify as a big city on the trip. This is about seeing America, not the cities. And I think, especially now that we're in what a lot of people call flyover territory, where people don't just drive through Utah or the Dakotas or even Colorado because it's not, unless you're going to one of these national parks, it's just not something that a lot of people do because it's so vast. But that's what we wanted to see. And we've encountered a lot of small towns along the way that it just kind of crystallizes to us two things. Number one, we live in a great city. Greenville, South Carolina is awesome. And it's a wonderful place to raise a family and to live. But there are a lot of places in this country that don't ever get talked about, that you don't ever see in person, that are truly unique as well. And we're also finding, Fred, that throughout our travels, when talking to either other campers from all across the country or just the locals in each of the areas that we stopped at, that Americans are way more alike than we are different. And I think a lot of time on our social media feeds, and if you allow yourself to get sucked into the polarization that I think sometimes we get into, especially in the political world, the polarization, that's not the reality of America, of most people. Most people are just like us. They have certain things they like doing a little different than others. But we're finding that, these Southerners from South Carolina aren't really different from the Michiganders, aren't really different from those from South Dakota. We all are very similar in what makes us tick.
Well, you mentioned seeing a lot of places in America, and I've saved this one for the last. It's episode 21, which is the first. It's so big, understandably, it got 2 episodes. Let's talk about Yellowstone National Park.
Yeah, I made a pledge early in this trip that I wasn't going to try to rank places, because I thought, that's unfair, because every place truly has some unique things to it. But Anne has never made that promise to herself, and she will tell you very quickly that this trip to Yellowstone and Grand Tetons, which I'll also mention in this, is at the top of her list. And Yellowstone is, I think, truly unique as a national park because it has a little bit of everything. It's got the geological things going on, Old Faithful, Grand Prisma, which you're seeing right there. All of that stuff going on, but they've also got great canyons and prairies and animals and wildlife. It's one of those parks where if you can go each day to a different part of the park and see something totally different, totally unique. And I think what also makes Yellowstone in this area very intriguing to visit is just about 90 minutes south of Yellowstone is Grand Teton National Park. And from a visual perspective, Grand Teton will blow you away. And so if you really are looking to see, I think, the most iconic visuals of our country in one place, if you can't go like what we're doing and go everywhere, you can only go to one place. If you base yourself out of Yellowstone, and even if you can't make it down to Grand Tetons, if you base yourself out of Yellowstone, you will see a tremendous diversity of, as I mentioned, wildlife and visual just beauty.
Let me call back the football part of your past very quickly. So what are the halftime stats? And it's actually more like the first quarter stats so far that you guys have accumulated.
Well, we've put on some miles, especially now that we're out west. The Northeast was relatively easy. Because everything that we stopped along the way would only be a couple of hours from the previous place. And we stay typically about 5 nights at each location that we stop at. But now that we're here out west, point A to point B sometimes is quite a long way. In fact, there's times where we can't make it all the way to where we are going, and we'll stop for one night and kind of the midway point and then drive the next day to get there. But we've accumulated over 12,000 miles in the Beast, which is what we call the truck. And then our rig is named Allie. And this is our 20th home base that we're at right now here in Utah. And I think we've had about 9 or 10 of these one night stops along the way to get from point A to point B. But from all accounts, at the end of the first quarter, to go back to the football analogy, we're winning. We're off to a great start. Our problems or our issues have been small, thankfully, to this point. And, we always said if we're going to have a mistake or have something go wrong, we are traveling down the road with our house behind us. That's the way you have to think about it. And you can't live in the truck and you can't drive with the rig. We need them both. And so you've got to be able to keep all that safe. And so the little issues we've had, thankfully, have been little and small. And so I'd say at the end of the first quarter, we're off to a great start.
Let me let everyone know where they can follow along, because you can just go and there it is right there. It's on YouTube. It's very easy to find. All these videos are in that 30-minute area, give or take. Reimer on the Road with Scott and Ann. You can follow along. They're also on Instagram. Scott is very, very active on X and all kinds of social media. So it's easy to find them that way. In the few minutes I have left with you, You've done a lot in a quarter. What is left to get done between now and the end of May 2026 when you finally come back to Greenville?
Well, we still have quite a lot of national parks to visit. We said when we started this trip that life could get in the way of something, and it may pull us away. And we've had a life update. It's a good life update, but it is an update that will cause us to have to pivot a little bit, or Ann will, to help one of our daughters, and then we will get out to California. If everything goes well, we'll be out in Northern California in mid-December, and we'll take the halftime show and hop on a plane and go back to Greenville, South Carolina. We'll store the rig and the truck in California and spend the Christmas holiday at home. And then we start the second half in the third quarter back into California. We're going to do our best to stay warm in January and February, and then we'll begin slowly making our way back to the upstate of South Carolina. And when it's all said and done, we won't have hit every national park nor every state. But if everything goes to plan, we will hit the big rocks, the things we really wanted to make sure that we can do. And hopefully we inspire by doing this others to take trips, you to Mackinac Island with your wife, our daughters, anybody that are watching the YouTube videos. It gives you a little bit of camping information, but if you're not into camping, that's okay, because it gives you a little bit of information about what to do in the various places that we're going. So we're paying back forward what we did. We did a lot of research ourselves on these places and on camping and all of that. And so it's just a summary to give back to other people, and maybe they can take a little snippet from it and go make a great adventure for them.
Reimer on the Road with Scott and Ann. Give our best to your wife. Thank you for spending a few minutes away from your journey to talk with us today, and we'll be following along because it's a long road ahead. Thanks, Scott, for being here.
Thank you, Fred.
All right, Scott Reimer and On the Road with Scott and Ann. That's this week's edition of Fred the Show. Thanks for joining us here on WSPA Plus.